So every time game prices come up online, someone posts the same exact line. A $50 game from the 90s would now cost over 100 US dollars today once you add just for inflation. And therefore, their conclusion is that the modern games are actually cheap. And here's the thing. The math on that is technically correct, but the conclusion people draw from it is wrong. Games should not cost whatever a decades-old sticker price happens to inflate to today. They should cost what makes sense for that specific game in today's market. But let's give the argument its due first, because the number actually checks out. 50 US dollars in 1996 comes out to somewhere around 100 to 107 today, depending on which inflation measure you use. So if the only question is, has the US dollar or other currency lost its value since 1996 or whatever other date we're using, then yes, obviously, the answer is yes. But look at what inflation actually is and what it represents. It's a backward-looking number. By definition, it tells you how much prices have already moved, on average, across a huge basket of completely unrelated things. Rent, eggs, airline tickets, haircuts, and somewhere in there is entertainment spending too. It doesn't tell you what any one single product in any single industry should cost going forward. Using it that way gets the logic backwards. You're taking a number that describes what has already happened everywhere and using it to prescribe what should happen to one specific thing. Not to mention, prices in different industries move for completely different reasons. Labor costs, manufacturing costs, competition, technology, scarcity, regulation, none of that is uniform across sectors. And it never will be. The pricing dynamics behind, let's say, a loaf of bread in your local store are not the same as the pricing dynamics behind a private jet, even though both of these things are included in the same national inflation number. So when someone says inflation was 115% since 1996, therefore every product in every industry should cost at least 115% more, otherwise it should be considered cheap. Well, they're just treating one averaged, oversimplified statistic as a pricing rule for every individual good on earth. Followed consistently, that logic has no floor. Everything would need to permanently outpace its own category's inflation just to catch up, which pushes the average higher, which then becomes next year's new bar to catch up to, and it just continues infinitely. That's not a pricing model. But this brings us to the real reason games are priced the way they are. The market itself is completely different than it was back in the 1990s. Back then, gaming was still closer to an enthusiast hobby. Today, you have billions of active video game players on the entire planet. It's a much bigger, a much more mainstream, more global, more digital market. And this changes what a game actually needs to charge, because there are now dramatically more ways to make money from the same title. Subscriptions, cosmetics, DLCs, and many other ways to monetize games. Not to mention years of post-launch sales that simply did not exist to the same extent in the 90s. Here's the part people miss though. Yes, budgets went up, way up. Big budget games now routinely cost $100 million, $200 million, or even more than that. But the potential audience for that budget grew too, arguably much faster. And if you can spread a fixed development cost across, let's say, 10 million players instead of 1 million players, or across 100 million players instead of 10, the price you need to charge per player doesn't have to rise one for one with the budget, let alone with inflation. A bigger market can support a lower price per copy, not a higher one. And this is a dynamic that exists in many different industries that became much bigger over time. Then there's competition. In 2025 alone, more than 20,000 new games launched on Steam, more than double the number that launched just 5 years earlier in 2020. A new release today isn't just fighting other new releases for your attention. It's fighting Steam sales, free-to-play games, Game Pass, your own backlog, live service games you might already be playing, and whatever your friends happen to be into that week or that month. In the 1990s, shelf space at a retail store was the bottleneck, and the publisher decided what got made and how much of it existed. And the bottleneck is gone because the barriers to actually making and shipping a game have completely collapsed over the years. You don't need a manufacturing deal to produce physical copies of your game. You don't need the publisher's blessing anymore. Engines, asset stores, digital storefronts, crowdfunding, platforms like YouTube, Twitch, all made it dramatically easier to build something and put it in front of players. You don't even need to be a programmer anymore to make a video game. Heck, you technically don't need to know anything about how to make a video game because you can learn all of it online. And there are examples of indie developers who have done exactly that, and not only they have done that, their games went on to be very successful. So the barriers are lower than they have ever been in this industry's history. And that's amazing for creativity, but it's brutal for anyone's individual pricing power because the supply has exploded. On top of all that, the product itself has changed. A game is no longer just a box on a shelf with one price tag. It can be a base game. It can be a deluxe edition. It can be an expansion pass, a battle pass, cosmetics, subscription. It can be many different things. And aggressive monetization is a whole different topic for a whole different video, but it is a fact, and it's not going away, whether we like it or not. Now, let me say this clearly. This doesn't mean all that monetization is good for players. A lot of it is genuinely predatory, especially within the mobile space, but not just there. And it's a topic for a whole separate video. But whether you like it or not, the sticker price on the box stopped being the whole business model very long time ago. It's just one input among many now. So to wrap things up, what actually decides the price? It's certainly not a chart. The specific product in its specific market is what decides the price. And you can watch this happen in real time right now. Rockstar and Take-Two set Grand Theft Auto 6's standard edition at $80 for its November 2026 launch. Neither company pulled out an inflation calculator. They priced those games at the top of the market because of what those specific games are. Era-defining, once-in-a-generation, massive releases with enormous built-in demand. At least that's what they think. We can also talk about whether that's going to be true or not, and it's a good topic for a whole separate video. But the point is, games like GTA 6 can set the price at $80 because they have a massive built-in demand. But plenty of other new games launched this same year at $30, $40, or $60 because they're nowhere near comparable to GTA 6 in terms of recognizability, demand, etc. GTA 6 can obviously charge more than an unknown indie title. Nintendo can hold the price longer than most publishers for several different reasons. There is no universal correct price for a video game any more than there's a correct price for a car. And here's a fun fact. According to 2026 Newzoo's PC and console gaming report, sub-$30 new releases are capturing a larger and larger share of the market in terms of player spending. In 2025, sub-$30 new releases accounted for 9% of total PC revenue. And this number is going up. Now, this particular data is only from 6 markets, but it's a very interesting trend nonetheless. And not a very surprising one either. You can of course also say that the games in this category, meaning sub-$30, are not directly comparable to AAA releases, for example, which on one hand is true, but on the other hand, all those games are competing for a share of the same exact spending pie. And at the end of the day, if more people start deciding that they like the value proposition of a $20 game or three separate $20 games more than they like the value proposition of a $60 game, then, well, they're going to take their money and spend it on the $20 games instead of the $60 ones. And personally, I think we're going to see more of that. We are already seeing more of that. And this is before we even start to consider the fact that a large percentage of people who play games do not even buy them at full price very often, but wait for sales instead. This is especially true on the PC. So yes, if you only look at the sticker price and run it through the inflation calculator, yeah, games are cheaper than they used to be. That part is technically correct, but it was never the whole story. The industry got much bigger, much more competitive, more digital, more global, and monetized in ways that simply did not exist 30 years ago or even 20 years ago. And inflation, at the end of the day, is just one input into all of this. It was never the pricing model to begin with. And that's all I really wanted to say in this video. So if you enjoy this kind of content, leave a like and subscribe. And thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.